All right, we're getting down to the nitty-gritty and local gridiron conference races. This is Richard Walker, sports editor for the Shelby Star and Gaston Gazette. I'm Joe Hughes, a sports writer here at the Gaston Gazette, and we're ready to dissect what was Week 8 and look forward to what we have ahead in Week 9. Let's jump right into it. Of course, the biggest story was Hunter Huss taking care of business at Kings Mountain last week. You were there. Tell us a little bit about what.
Interesting game. There was a stretch early in the game where Huss scored so quickly and scored on defense with an interception that I believe it was, the plays were 35-6 in favor of Kings Mountain. I think the game ended up being maybe 65-45. I'm fairly close if I'm off a little bit. But Kings Mountain had the ball most of the time. And a lot of it was Huss scored too quickly or scored on defense or had short fields and were able to kind of take advantage of that. And again, you know, you had a galaxy of stars for us. Jaheim Mullen has an interception that set up the first score, then runs an actual interception for one of maybe their second or third score. Dontavius Nash has a big reception. Mullen has a pass catch for a touchdown. I think 2 for touchdowns. I mean, you know, Zoe Wallace had big keep play alive runs and keep play alive passes. So it was a concerted effort. You know, Devin Lowry had a great game on defense. Prince Beamer had a great game on defense. I mean, I'm probably leaving somebody out. They had Chase Williamson. They had a really good all-around effort. Yeah. And Kings Mountain, as we've alluded to a little bit earlier in this year, a year ago, Raquelin Mack ran for about 1,800 yards and all sorts of touchdowns. This year, whether it's the knee injury he suffered in the first week, the loss of personnel on the offensive line, or some combination of the two, their run game just doesn't seem settled or consistent enough for them to kind of ever feel like you're in possession. And again, the folks in Kings Mountain, I almost feel bad. I'm sorry I've been to your 2 games that you've lost this year, so I've seen the bad Kings Mountain, such as it would be. But a year ago when I watched them play, I saw them lose to Robinson in the playoffs, they ran the ball effectively. This year, that's a struggle, and maybe that says more about Shelby and Huss's defenses than Kings Mountain struggles on offense, because in other games they have run the ball fairly effectively. But Huss seemed to be successful in making Kings Mountain one-dimensional, and that really kind of set the tenor of the game. But Kalen Wade's such an effective player and such a good scrambler. He kept plays alive, and they were able to move the sticks. But obviously, as you get closer to the goal line, it's more challenging if you only can throw the football.
Things don't get any easier for Huss, even after such an emotional win. They take on a solid Crest squad, and that's going to be. I'm excited for that one, mainly because of the fact that it seems like in the trenches, those 2 teams are built very similarly.
It is fascinating. I was talking to some people about it. You know, I went to Crest years ago. This team reminds me an awful lot of those Crest teams in the 80s that kind of kept it between the tackles, managed the game. Kimberlin can throw it downfield, but this Crest team seems happier to kind of make it a between the trenches type game. So it'll be interesting to see if Huss can make them uncomfortable in the way that they made Kings Mountain uncomfortable last week. And really, if you go back to it, to me, Huss's season has kind of taken off after the win against Clover, because when you look at the results, they probably should have beaten all those teams. I mean, I thought they were better than the teams that they beat. But Clover was a game that could have gone either way. Kings Mountain's a game that could have gone either way. And now you're at Crest, the same kind of situation. And it does seem Jamar McCoy and his staff has gotten them a little less mistake prone, which was kind of a criticism they've had. They've had an awful lot of penalties this year. They had a lot of penalties last week, but I don't remember them being as damaging as sometimes I felt they were in the past. It was, you know, play error, and again, coaches will say if it's errors of aggression, I can live with that. If it's errors of pre-snap omission, that's a problem, because it's hard to live 1st and 15 if you're having false starts.
Right.
So it seems to me Huss has kind of tightened up what they're doing, and there's an element too with Huss, and I don't know how you feel about this, but you know, I've seen a lot of these kids, really in most cases it's middle school. Obviously Tony Davis, Zoe Wallace, Malik Corey, Marcus Mooney, some of these guys that if you've been around the sports scene the last several years, as I have, you've seen these guys grow and progress and get better and better and better. And I'm probably even out guys like Prince Beamer, Chase Williamson. I mean, Huss has a really talented and deep squad of players that, from my eye test, appear to be getting better almost each and every week. And you're going to need to do that if they're going to realize the goals that they have, which are state championship. I mean, and I've been blessed to see a lot of state championship teams around here, and Huss certainly would appear to me to check a lot of boxes on that pass.
Aside from that matchup of, we said Kings Mountain, Ashbrook, you also have in Big South 3A play Forest View at Burns. You also have Stuart Kramer at North Gaston. Big games galore in that conference, all of them really playing into the...
I think there's a 5-letter word that comes into play on those 3 matchups. It's called pride.
Yeah.
And Kings Mountain is emotionally hurt. Ashbrook may be physically hurt because I'm under the impression that both Ja'Kai Greer and Tyrese Nicholas needed assistance from the game last week at Crest.
Mm-hmm.
Both injuries, obviously we may not know until game time on Friday. The mental injuries, certainly for our team like Burns, you were at that game last week, had a chance to win that game, had a fantastic effort from Keon Pryor that kind of got overlooked because of the way that Kramer came back and won.
Yeah.
Forest View, you know, I've been talking about every week about will they finally get a reward? They did last week. That's a fascinating game to me.
Yep.
And then, of course, poor North Gaston has had so many injuries to key players. How do they manage this? Stuart Kramer, Luke Carpenter does come back, does lead a big comeback. So, you know, you got to look at Forest View and Stuart Kramer as having the mojo, but both of those games you could kind of see going a lot of different ways. And all 3 of those games, because of there's some mental factors outside of their, outside of their control in some respects.
Shifting gears, there's another big game aside from Huss and Crest, and that is South Point making the trip to East Rutherford for a huge Southwestern 2A clash. East Rutherford is averaging nearly 50 points per game this year. South Point has been pretty good on defense.
Yes.
I kind of expect South Point to not give up 50 points, but they're going to give up a few.
You would think. And they're saying South Point won 55-7 last year. I went to that game and it was not even that competitive. Now you felt like that Mooney was a talent, and he is a talent.
Yep.
And Cade Hamilton, who's now playing at Gardner-Webb, was the senior linebacker last year for East Rutherford. This rivalry, if you count Beaumont and Forest City High School, is dated in 1937. They've been going at it a long, long time. South Point is up 20-9 as South Point versus East Rutherford. I'm interested to see how this goes because, again, we've talked a lot about how South Point, year to year, exhibits why they're a program. It doesn't matter who the players are in place, and once they establish the fullback and the quarterback and get the periphery of their defense, and I feel like this is one of South Point's better defensive units, almost regardless of statistics, because I look at all the different playmakers they've got on defense, and they've gotten an awful lot of support in their secondary, a lot of athleticism in their secondary, and I say that Nassim Jones being able to kind of take over that fullback position has really kind of helped make that happen. I would expect South Point to win, but you know, this is one of those things where you look at the schedule and go, South Point we know has been tested. We're not certain East Rutherford has been tested, but this is clearly going to qualify as a test, and I'm sure for East Rutherford, you're happy that it's at home. And you've got the revenge angle of last year really getting embarrassed in Beaumont.
Yeah, and it's going to come down to who has the most weapons. South Point getting Ray Greer back, that means a lot.
Absolutely. 2 punt returns last week. I mean, he wasn't highlighted that much, but it shows you the different ways in which he can make his impact known on the game.
Right. And speaking of vaunted offenses, we expect a high-scoring affair between Mountain Island Charter and Community School Davidson next week or this weekend. Elijah Burrs continues his pursuit of 2,000 yards, but
he might be pursuing 3,000 yards the way he's going.
I'm telling you, 200 plus a game. I think the lowest he's had is probably 169.
I believe that was in a blowout where they probably could have.
No, it was a loss against Stuart Kramer.
Okay, Stuart Kramer. Okay.
Yeah, because he actually had one.
He still had a good game.
Yes. Yeah. Community School Davidson's been putting up points in bunches. They were 2-0 in conference going into last week. Lost a barn burner to Thomas Jefferson. What does Mount Island Charter have to do to win this game?
Well, their loss to Bessemer City means they've got to win out.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, it's interesting, each of the last couple of years, Bessemer City has beaten Mountain Island Charter. It seemed like they forced them to reassess what they were doing, and they played better in the second half of the season. That looks 2 weeks removed from that to be the case again. But you're right. I mean, that game could be fascinating. And no coach you ever talk to likes to see a high-scoring game because you feel like you're not in control. And so it may simply come down to which defense is able to hamper the other the opposition's offense the best.
Yeah.
That may not happen, but clearly, kind of like what we referenced when we talked first the video, Huss, I think, was able to beat Kings Mountain more by forcing Kings Mountain into throwing situations and being almost exclusively a throwing team. Not that Kings Mountain can't do that, but it's hard to be a one-dimensional team in a game like that unless you've got truly exceptional talent, and Kings Mountain does, and I think Community School Davidson and Mountain Island Charter do, but I think it's hard in a high school setting for a team to be solely run and solely pass and always dominate in these kind of high-scoring type games. So it'll be interesting to see. A lot of us will be following what happens over in Huntersville, or I guess Mount Holly, wherever you want to call it, near Mount Holly, Huntersville Road, however that works out on Friday night.
Certainly. And then, of course, other games of interest we have East Lincoln, after taking a loss against North Lincoln last week, they head to Bandy's, and that's a pretty big game in the scheme of things. They don't want to fall 2 games back in the loss column in South Fork 2A. North Lincoln hosts Maiden, which has kind of fallen on hard times.
Yes.
Those are 2 teams going in opposite directions.
And we'd be remiss. I mean, what a job by North Lincoln coach Nick Basil.
Yeah.
Out of football, gets hired in July. A coach leaves to go to a rival school, and he's come in and changed the culture there. I mean, they're the only blemish on West Lincoln's record overall. I think most of us anticipated them not being able to handle East Lincoln. They did just that. So here we are. I mean, what a job out of North Lincoln, and can they keep it going? And obviously, I anticipate a lot of excitement and enthusiasm out of the Knights supporters when they play Bandy's.
Right. Speaking of West Lincoln, and another 2 teams going in totally opposite directions.
Yes.
Lincolnton travels to West Lincoln, and West Lincoln got back on the good side of things last week with a pretty easy win. I think it was over. Who did they play last week?
Newton Conover.
Newton Conover. That is correct.
Yeah, the series is very much in Lincoln's favor, 38-6. But this certainly looks like a year that they may be celebrating in Vail, or Cat Square more specifically.
Yes.
But West Lincoln has done all they're anticipated to do except for a 1-point loss to North Lincoln. So I'm curious to see how it goes. And Lincoln, not reminding us a lot of Lincoln. I mean, it's a fascinating turn of events in that conference. It's almost like opposite year, because if you've got the teams like Maiden and Lincoln struggling and Newton Conover struggling, and you've got North Lincoln and West Lincoln and non-traditional teams like that being good, and even Bandy's, although Bandy's has had some success in the past, but recently not so much. It's made for a really fascinating South Fork 2A race, and one that no one foresaw when the year started.
Right. Pine Lake Prep goes to Bessemer City. Bessemer City's 3-0 in conference play, much to many people's surprise. Union Academy and Cherryville, both of those teams looking to get on the board in conference play. Speaking of trying to get on the board in conference play, Rock Hill goes to Clover. Clover lost a tough one last week. We keep saying it, but can they get over their little mental hump as far as league play is concerned in Region 4, 5A?
Well, and again, and you've covered a lot of South Carolina high school football. I've been kind of this mind. I mean, how many years in a row is Clover going to come to North Carolina, wear our teams out, go to their own state and struggle for you not to kind of see the difference between the 2 states in football? And again, I'm not trying to demean North Carolina football. It just speaks to how good South Carolina football has been.
Right.
And this looked to be a year in which Clover had an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And now we got 2 conference games to go, and that opportunity is slipping away from their grasp.
Yep, there are only 3 teams that are going to make the playoffs, and if they're going to make the playoffs, this is a must.
They've got to win 2 in a row.
Exactly.
To ensure that. I mean, they could get in at 1 and 3, but I don't want to put that.
1 and 3.
I don't want to put that.
Not going to cut it.
You wouldn't think.
Highland Tech at Thomas Jefferson.
Tough matchup for the Rams after some really heartbreaking losses. They're kind of what I've said about Forest View. They've tried so hard to get a reward and just haven't really gotten one in conference play. Don't know that this is the week for them, but obviously they're a much improved football program and team from where they've been in the past, and they're desperately looking to get some reward for that hard work they put in.
Right. And, lastly, Shelby at RS Central. Shelby coming off a big win last week, and they are back rolling.
Yeah, 56-6-4 all-time series between those 2. So yeah, I have no reason to believe that Shelby won't make it 57 this week.
Certainly. Well, we look forward to another week of good football action in the area. Of course, again, we look forward to seeing you next week at the same time. Richard Walker, I'm Joe Hughes.